This is the Founders Catalyst. Hello, folks, and welcome into the Founders Catalyst. Lee, we've taken a little bit of a break, but it's all good because we're about to come into, let's say, more of a seasonal approach to the show. We're going to hit folks with many episodes over smaller periods, and I think that for us works better with who we are because we are not folks that quit on something that we've started, and after a little break we've decided this is the approach that we're going to take with the show, and I think it's going to actually be more digestible, let's say, for our listeners to take things in more of a seasonal stride. So with that being said, we are going to hit the ground running with the idea of showing up as, well, discussing the idea of who you want to be as a leader, with the big emphasis, I think, on the word be, who you want to be. And so, Lee, I'm going to throw it to you, as I like to do with all of this. You've got some recent work that you're doing around this concept with some folks that you work with, and I want to explore this because for me, so much of this is based in identity, and I just love talking about all this kind of stuff. So why don't you start us off, buddy?
Yeah. Hello, fans. And that's my mum and Steve's mum. Welcome to season 2 of the Founders Catalyst. I think a lot of us, especially when we're thinking as leaders, believe there's a certain way that we have to be. And I would like us to discuss today who you actually are and how you be your authentic self. And that sounds a little bit silly. I bet a lot of people listen like, well, I am my authentic self. And what I would challenge is, when you were growing up, you had certain genetic personality traits. You met the world responded to you and those personality traits, and the world originally was your family. So whoever was closest to you, whoever brought you up, that was the entire world for you as a little kid. And you responded to their response to you, and you adapted to get through your family system in the safest way possible for you. Then we leave that family system, we leave that village, we leave that school, we get out into the big wide world, and now we don't need to adapt to that family system, yet that adaptation that we created that kept us safe as kids is still playing out as adults. And when I say to somebody, who do you want to be? Really, a lot of it is letting go of that adaptive survival system and getting back to your authentic self. And it's a little bit more complex than it sounds, Steve. You know, it sounds easy. Yeah, just be your authentic self. In my experience, a lot of us don't even really know what our authentic self is until we've done some work on that. And it can be incredibly tiring to be living through the world not as your authentic self.
The fatigue factor, that's the alarm, right? I mean, that's when we start to say, okay, something's up, something's hard, and so much of the adaptive qualities that we have as humans are really, what it does is it implies that it's on other people's terms, you know. And so for me, I think as leaders, we would be naive to say that we're never adapting to what's going on around us. I immediately think of, I just came back from the UK for Christmas, and whenever I go back to the UK, immediately I become more British. Like even just the way I said British. That then, like British, you know, and it's just like straight away. My wife looks at me and she's just like, "What's happening right now?" And I'm just like, "You're gonna have to get used to it for the next 2 weeks." And then the moment my feet set foot back on US soil and I meet somebody, you know, in immigration, I'm just like, immediately all my Americanisms kick right back in, and I'm like, "What is this about?" And that right there, it's not Steve being any more or less authentic in those moments, or is it? Like in my mind, I'm like, am I being less authentic when I'm living in the US? I don't know. Am I more comfortable when I'm in the UK, where I came from? And it's that sense of belonging. Like, what do you want to belong to? And it's like that for me. That's such a powerful part of this that I think we have to consider as a leader. It's like, what do you want to associate yourself with? What do you want to belong to? Right?
Belonging is so important for human beings. You know, we go back to tribal times, creation of humans as a species, or involvement as a species, And if you got ostracized from the community, you died. So that's why belonging, the need to belong, the need to fit in, the need to feel loved and accepted is so unbelievably strong for humans. Being ostracized, even now, we see this with teenagers, being in the out group or being unfriended is devastating for them. For those of you that got kids, if they fall out with their friends, it feels like their world is ending, because to their nervous system, it is, because that would have meant death. And part of this work is how we move above that to conscious choice of how do I want to be in this moment, and who am I? Am I being true to who I am? And you're being true to yourself in some ways when you adapt to fit in, because that is a survival mechanism in itself, right? How do I fit in British culture? How do I fit in American culture? I'm less adaptable than you, so it's taken me longer to make that switch.
Yeah.
And for the first decade I was here, I really struggled with the difference in cultures, because they're much more different than you think. Humor's so different, the way that people connect is so different. And what I see with really good leaders is they're able to adapt to other people to get the best from them, but what they don't do is change themselves in doing so. They meet those people where they're at, they understand what those people need, but they don't change themselves. They don't compromise on their morals, they don't compromise on their ideas, and they're able to be very clear about, this is who I am, and then this is who I'll be in relation with you so that I can support you. Does that make sense, Steve?
It does, and it makes me think, like, is it, you hear this often from, direct reports and those that are being led, and you'll hear them say, like, when it comes to this said leader, you know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get with this individual. And it's one of those terms, depending on context, one of those phrases, depending on context, where it could mean something very positive or something very negative, right? And so suddenly now you just go, well, maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's the goal as a leader, is that when you talk about who you want to be, what is being associated with that is, who do you want to be consistently? It's not about who do you want to be based on these situations. Who do you want to be based on that situation? It's like, no, who do you want to be from a consistent standpoint in terms of how you are seen by those that you lead? But at the same time, consistency isn't tiring when we're doing it from an authentic place. It's like, how do we achieve consistency whilst also maintaining authenticity at the same time? And that's that beauty. If there were such a little graph that we could look at, and we had authenticity on one side and consistency across the bottom, it's like, how do we find that sweet spot? How do we find that? Because I think, one might argue, like, can we be fully authentic and fully consistent at the same time? I don't know, but it's an interesting idea and an interesting sort of paradox to go into, and just say, is that achievable? Can we achieve that? Should we even be aspiring to achieve that as a leader at the same time?
Just be autistic. It's so much easier, Steve. Yes, I think we can, and I think the authenticity part is what leads to the consistency. If you're not being authentic, it's very difficult to be consistent, because you're a chameleon. And as you know, I do a lot of men's work with men's groups, and this is something we come across a lot. I've got a friend who runs a group called Men Without Masks, and I think that sums it up. It's taken off this mask, what I would call this shield that got us through childhood, right? This adaptive behavior, and then going, this is who I am at kind of my best. And then can I consistently show up as the best version of me? and to do that, energy levels are good indicators. You pointed out earlier, and I thought that was very astute. If you're fatigued, there's a good chance that you're showing up with your mask on, because it's so much more tiring to show up like that than as your authentic self. And the reason for that is because we're in our survival mode. So that means we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They're adaptations. They're adaptations that human beings have to protect us in times of stress. And if you are constantly wearing that adaptation, if you're constantly in fight mode, and we all know people like this, like any kind of comment, there's a huge reaction to it. I was go-karting the other night with some friends, and it's one of the things I do. I'm really good at it. There's a helmet behind me here. It's something I do. And this one guy got so annoyed that I was so much faster than him. Like really, really annoyed with it. And you could see that he was just in fight mode. He wanted to fight me, literally wanted to have a fight. He was arguing and screaming and shouting because he got beaten in go-karting.
Right.
And I saw this guy and I thought to myself, he must be exhausted because that's the way he's approaching the whole world, that the world is a fight. The only way he can survive is a fight. So everything to him looks like an obstacle, a challenge, something that must be beaten. And that's an unbelievably tiring way to live. But it's also unbelievably tiring to be a people pleaser and fawn the whole time and think, well, how do I feed the animal? How do I calm the other animals down so that I can be okay? That's also unbelievably tiring. So if you can locate yourself, and if you listen back to one of our episodes, we talked about above and below the line, and we talked about this regulation before and the survival system of fight, flight, freeze and fawn. If you can locate yourself and go, I'm in the survival mechanism right now, right? I'm adapting, I'm fighting, I'm running away, I'm trying to please somebody. If you can locate yourself there, take a big deep breath and step back and go, how would I like to be instead? Well, that's how I think you can move from that activated nervous system to actual authenticity. And when I see leaders do that, you see them blossom, you see their energy levels skyrocket because everything isn't a fight anymore. Everything isn't something they have to run away from.
Yeah. And it's giving ourselves permission for all that too, right? And I think that's part of it as well. I think some people will wear with the badge of honor, I am tired as a leader. I am exhausted as a leader. I'm supposed to be. And I want to be able to walk around my office, whatever it might be, and just say, you have no idea what it's like to lead, the burdens, the fatigue and all these kind of things. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. And there's really you actually don't get what you might think you're getting in those moments as a leader by stressing something like that. Like, you're not going to be met with, oh, really? Like, that's, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're burdened.
So sorry you earn 10 times as much as me and your responsibility.
That's not what you're going to get. It's going to fall on deaf ears. In fact, it's going to actually come back to you in some form of resentment. Yeah. And so you just go, well, then if people aren't going to appreciate the fact that I'm fatigued as a leader, then why am I allowing myself to be fatigued? What might they appreciate instead? Oh, you know what they might appreciate? They might appreciate the fact that I'm finding myself as a leader and that I'm actually vocal about that. And I actually want to share some of my aspirational components towards authenticity as a leader with my team. And if I do that, what will I be encouraging of everyone else in that process too? Yeah. Right? And like that for me is the sweet spot. Can we be vulnerable enough as a leader to not, vulnerable and brave. Like, so the bravery comes from, firstly, I'm going to get selfish enough and say, I want to be an authentic leader. And then the vulnerability component of it is to actually go above and beyond and share that aspiration with those that you're leading in order to welcome them in. Like, imagine if the feedback you start getting as a leader is in alignment with the leader that you're trying to become. How powerful does that become? What kind of space are you inviting and creating then as a leader when you're not just aspiring, but you're sharing that aspiration and giving folks permission to actually then contribute and say, you look tired right now, or you appear to be frustrated right now. Like, is this in alignment with this leader that you stated you wanted to be? Like, that's a powerful mirror that you can actually then encourage your followers, your direct reports to start holding up for you.
I think as humans, one of the reasons that humans evolved beyond other apes and other systems and other animals is because we can tell stories, and stories connect us. And the problem is we can tell good stories or we can tell negative stories. Mm-hmm. And you hit the nail on the head. So many leaders are telling a negative story. I'm so tired. This is so difficult. One of my clients was working with another coach, and he pointed out that language that he was using all the time. This is so tough. I'm so tired. This is so difficult. And he said, you're relating to it like that. Why don't you relate to it as, this is a privilege? And not many people get to do this. Very few people get to be founders. Right? This is the Founders Catalyst podcast. We are talking to you, founders, leaders. It's rarefied atmosphere up there. Very few people get that privilege to be able to actually have something that you are in charge of and responsible for on that level. And you can relate to it as, oh my God, it's this unbelievable burden. Nobody understands how hard I work, and come from it from that victim mentality of it's so unfair. Or you can come from it from a joyful place of, I get to do this. This is a privilege. I get to be somebody that has to, that wants to understand complexity, that wants to inspire people, that can inspire people. Not many of us get the opportunity to inspire other people to be the best versions of themselves. That's an incredible gift. Mm-hmm. And you still get to have place for your emotions. You can still be frustrated and annoyed. And we're not saying that you have to have no emotions and no emotional response. What I'm offering, and what I believe you're offering too, Steve, is that you get to recognize those, regulate it, or learn from it, and then move past them. So you have this range of, I feel something. What does that tell me about what's going on right now? How would I now like to act instead based on that information? How do I want to show up as me rather than this reactive version of me? I want to show up as the conscious, cognitive version of me, learning from my experience in the world. And when you do that, you will inspire others to show up like that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what we're addressing here with this initial question of who do you want to be as a leader, I think what we're addressing, a few things, but one thing that stands out now to me is just listening to you there is the need for us to model this as the leader. And I think it would be very selfless, generous, however you want to put it, for you to sort of lead and encourage that others practice this approach in how they work. But it really starts with you. It really if you're preaching that and all they're seeing is a fatigued, frustrated, all this kind of thing, it's just like, then you're just this guy or gal who's taking concepts from a book and preaching it to everybody and not modeling it and not practicing it. And I almost encourage, with all that being said, there's very much this sort of cart before the horse component to this coming. Is like, don't get too caught up in what you're doing as a leader before you get way more comfortable and clear on who you want to show up as and be as a leader. And that is hard. I just don't want to, I want to preface this, like, neither of us are naive to the fact that this is very difficult to do, because a lot of the time, I can speak for the clients that I work with today, folks are told one week that they're responsible for one thing, and then they're getting a promotion the next, and they're responsible for a whole bunch of other things, and there's been no gradual increase to what they're doing. There's been no training offered. Sometimes it's like, now you're leading people, go. And it's like, wow, like I don't even have a sense of self before I start having a sense of others, and so like we both get that. We're both working with clients in those spaces. However, when you find those breaks, those windows of opportunity to say, hey, how am I showing up as a leader? Or, hey, I'm noticing that I'm tired right now, etc. This is where I believe this work begins, and you get to then get a little bit more selfish, find the discipline to pause and say, okay, who do I want to be as a leader? What's one thing I can start practicing right now to just feel better about the fact that I'm moving in that direction? Because none of this is overnight. None of this is, we don't sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write it all out. This is the leader I want to be. Okay, starting tomorrow, that's who I'm going to be. Like, we neither of us are that naive to it being that straightforwards. But that being said, it's going to be an incremental process that you have to get intentional around, and there's no better time than now, because I'm always thinking like this as a founder of my own coaching company, and you as a founder of your own coaching company, and we as leaders within our roles and our work. I always feel challenged to be consistent and disciplined in how I show up, and there's days where I don't want to show up the way that I know I need to, and the way I know I'm disciplined and committed to showing up as. Trust me, I had my bad days, and I want to be every bit of that, tired and stressed self, but it's in those moments where I'm like, well, who is Steve at his best, in his most optimal, in his most authentic, and how do I find the energy and the discipline right now to execute that version of Steve when every ounce of me is just like, I just want to throw in the towel right now, but you got to start by being aware, right?
I have 2 challenges for you, Stephen Miller.
Ooh.
The first challenge is you get to be your authentic self and you get to show up tired sometimes. I think there's that difference between, I am tired, and the story of my job is so hard, I'm always so worn out.
Right.
And people know the difference and they'll respect the difference. One is the shield that you use to convince others that you're working so hard. And it's bullshit and people see through it and they get very frustrated with it. The other is allows your team to see you and say, you know what, boss, you need a day off. I've seen that. I've seen colleagues, peers say to somebody, boss, you need a day off. Go for a vacation. You need some support. And that's really powerful when other leaders see you and can say, you are working really hard. But when you're carrying that story and it's inauthentic, nobody wants to see you there. It feels weird. Mm-hmm. The other one I have for you was when you said about being selfish. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's selfish to be your most authentic self. I think actually it's a gift. It's a gift for you and it's a gift for others. Mm-hmm. Yes, there is some inward reflection, right? You have to focus on yourself. I don't see that as selfish, because when you focus on yourself and you can understand who you are and you can let go of so much of that baggage, you're much easier to be around for you and for other people. And you also model to other people, actually, if you do a bit of work on yourself and you understand who you are and you get some coaching and you listen to some podcasts and you read some books and you actually implement this stuff, you are much easier to be around. You're a much easier person to communicate with. You're more thoughtful, you're more patient, you're more kind. And you then get, as a leader, that's the gift of leadership, is you get to role model that to other people and invite them to come and step up to it. The best leaders I see are inspirational leaders. We've spoken about it before. There's a guy called Randall Stutman, has a company called Admired Leadership. And I love that concept of the best leaders are admired, and they're admired because they make other people feel better about themselves in the way that they communicate with them, the way that they encourage them, the way that they connect with them. You cannot do that if you aren't connected to yourself like that. If your worldview of yourself is, I'm rubbish, I'm no good, or I'm frightened the whole time, or I'm stressed the whole time, how can you see somebody else? How can you have care for somebody else if you can't have care for yourself, or if you can't be kind to yourself? It's very hard to be kind to someone else. If you're incredibly judgmental as a leader, and I know a few of those, including myself, and if you're incredibly judgmental as a leader, what do you think that says to everybody else? What's the role modeling that you're giving to them? How do you think you're going to meet them and be comfortable and okay when they're growing and learning and making the mistakes that they need to make as part of their journey, that you made as part of your journey? And hopefully when you made them, someone went, okay, that happened. This is why we did this. This is how you made that decision. How would you make it differently next time?
Season 2, where Lee challenges Steve. Like that's, I like this. We're going to start. I'm gonna make a note, like, Lee is now open to being challenged. I'm just kidding. But
always, buddy.
Always. I know I need no invitation with you, but I appreciate it, and I enjoy I enjoy this idea of reframing what I've come to use as this term selfish, but so much of what you're saying is in alignment with what I mean by that. But at the same time, I think it's really important. It's a very important reframe. It's a very important, just detail here for folks to hear what you just said, because it's almost more of an ownership piece. It's just like be able to say like, hey, just own who you want to be. It's not selfish, but own who you want to be, own how you want to show up, and through that ownership, think of the gift that you're giving to other people, and what you're encouraging them to do. Again, it's that modeling concept. But I love it.
Pause there for one moment, actually, because
yeah.
I really like the ownership part of that. I think that's great, Steve.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I see a lot of leaders not do, is they don't own who they are and who they want to be.
Right.
They are a product of, well, I'm so busy because I have all these meetings I have to go to, and the world is happening to me, and it's so complex and overwhelming, instead of stepping into ownership.
Yeah.
Continue on that. I love it.
Yeah, I will, because for me, it was taught to me very, very early in life. I'm a very difficult person to embarrass. I've always said that to folks. Like the reason
Most British people are.
Most British people are, but I think I go to an extreme. It's just like there are very few situations where I feel embarrassed, and a lot of that comes from the work I do on myself. When I feel a sense of, let's say, imposter syndrome kick in, or a sense of like, oh, I don't know what's going on right now, or I'm being misunderstood right now, or I'm being exposed right now, whatever it might be. I've done so much work on myself and found so much comfort in owning, just like, okay, well, that's an opportunity for growth. That's an opportunity to go back and do some work on and give some thought to. But at the same time, the ownership piece as well for me is like, the last 4 years or so of business ownership for me has been nothing but ownership, in the sense, not in the sense of owning a business, more in the sense of owning the level of comfort I'm trying to find in myself in that process. Because I joke with current clients and prospective clients and people that aren't even potential clients, just people that have gotten to know me in business. Like, from a business standpoint, if you compare my business to every client that I work with, my business is less successful than every single client that I work with. So no one is hiring me for my business acumen, my business expertise, my business success. And I own that. I find great comfort in that. And what that's done for me is it's allowed me to say, so what is my value that I'm bringing right now? And for me, that's where I kind of wanted to go with this idea, is to come all the way back to what we're talking about now. Think of the value that you want to bring as a leader, and start to understand that there will be no greater value that you can bring as a leader than being the most optimal, authentic version of yourself. But that is the hardest thing to do. It's so hard to do until you actually take that ownership, that extreme ownership of just saying, like, it falls on me to be disciplined enough to invest and create an awareness in myself of when I am being myself and when I'm not being myself, when I am being adaptive, to go all the way back to where we started. When I know I'm being adaptive, I'm no longer owning the leader that I'm trying to show up as each and every day. But so for me, like that's what the last 4 years has done for me, which I've really enjoyed that journey. I've just been able to walk into a room and be like, I have no reason to get into a pissing match with said potential client based on my business versus their business, because that's not why they're hiring me. And so much where I'm, again, another part of this that I'm going to is, as leaders, stop assuming how it is you're supposed to be leading and what it is you're supposed to be bringing to your team, when I would argue one of the greatest gifts you can do is, quite frankly, owning who you are and leading as who you are. And if you do that, people will follow. And they'll also forgive you when you probably do something wrong in the process.
Yeah. As long as you're honest about it and share what you learned from it, that's engaging. That's mentoring. That's, hey, here's what I learned from my journey. Here's the mistakes that I've made. Mm-hmm. And that brings connection. When you don't own your mistakes, that does the very opposite. That burns all the bridges down and nobody trusts you. I love what you shared there. And yeah, my version of that is always having to be the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be smarter than my clients. My journey is, I always want to be the smartest person in every room I walk into. And then I realized how limiting that is. And now I want to be in rooms with people much smarter than me, because actually, authentic Lee is super curious and loves learning. But defended Lee needed to be the smartest person in the room so that he got attention. Mm-hmm. If I let go of needing that attention, as I get older and I realize I don't need that attention, I get enough attention as it is, I get enough love, I don't need that attention, I'm okay as I am. And I think working with one of the men in my men's group, and kind of basically we got down to, how does he want to be this year? He just wants to trust that he's okay That's it. Just wants to trust he is okay as he is, and he is lovable as he is. That's it. And a lot of his behaviours was about trying to be loved, but it was coming off in the wrong ways. And as soon as he can just accept he's completely okay and lovable as he is, and I think that's the same for me. When I accept that I'm okay as I am, I don't have to be the smartest person. That gives room for everybody else is brilliant, which is what I want. I want to help other people be brilliant and the best versions of themselves. And yeah, you've got to do that work on yourself to be able to get there. And I'm still learning. I still always want to be right instead of effective. You know,
but that's what we're encouraging with this, with
Yeah.
everything about this episode. It's like that constant curiosity towards who you are, how you're changing, and how you're growing. Because authentic you today versus authentic you 4 years from now won't be the same person, and that's fine. That's great. You know, authentic Steve definitely wasn't, 10 years ago is definitely not who authentic Steve is today. Like, so much has happened to Steve since then. But you have to have...
But that little kid inside, that little kid inside, he's still there. And I think the closer we get to him, that is our authenticity. Like, little Lee was unbelievably curious. And the world met him and kind of went, shut up, you're annoying.
Right.
And now what's my job? My job is to be curious. My job is to be curious about you in such a way that my questions help you also understand yourself. We're on this journey of discovery. I'm curious about you because you're curious about you, and we're both curious about you, and that's how we end up getting to you understanding yourself.
Yeah.
What a gift that little kid who was super curious and wanted to understand the world now gets to turn that into a career. I feel unbelievably lucky that that's my career.
Yeah. I hold on to little Steve just because he has a beautiful head of hair. Really nice head of hair. So it's nice.
No, mate. No, I've seen you with hair. You're much better looking as a bald man. This is the real version of
this
Steve.
is it. This is me thriving now. This is me thriving. Well, no, this was great, and I think I hope in closing, like, folks, as you listen to this, like, I want you to hear the need for this more than anything. I mean, there's going to be opportunities as we go through future episodes to get into more, maybe some tangible ways that we can practice some of this that we're talking about. But for me, what I love about it is we're just kind of creating an entry point for why this matters, right? and why you should consider this, and the opportunity just to really, where we finished here, to get curious. And if there were any kind of parting practices that I would maybe encourage you to do, I joked earlier that, hey, listen, you can't just write it all down and practice it the next day, but start there. Start writing down, start getting a little bit more curious about who the heck am I? Like, what is it I want? Like, why do I want it? And they're bigger questions, they're deeper questions, they're hard questions. But it's one of my favorite things in coaching is typically the short questions that should be the easiest to answer typically are the hardest, and that's why we avoid answering them. And it's just like, well, let's not do that. We're going to be a catalyst. We're the founder's catalyst, and we are the catalyst for you to go do some of this harder work and put down, who do I want to be as a leader at the top of a page, and just get curious, man. Just get curious and see what happens, right?
And also think about, who is it you admire yourself, and what qualities do you admire about them?
Yeah.
One of the best leaders I ever had when I was a young man in real estate, he had that quality of, he made everybody feel good about themselves. And he wasn't a wimpy leader. It's not like he was somebody who never put his foot down and never got angry and pissed off or disappointed. He had all of that range, and he saw the best in you and he wanted the best for you, and you felt it, and it was unbelievably inspiring. And that's who I still think of now. That's 30 years ago.
Yeah. Love that. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll close right there. I think this is tons of food for thought for anyone listening to this. Mom especially, just appreciate you continuing to listen. Think about the
Love
leader
you,
you
Mom.
want. Think about the leader you want to be in your 70s now, Mom. All right. But to anyone else that is not our moms, we appreciate you listening and continuing to invest in yourself, because that's what this is. It's a desire to spend 35 minutes with us and listen and get curious and practice, go away, think about how you can practice some of these ideas and not be too harsh on yourself. Like, you'll get it wrong and you'll get it wrong and you'll get it wrong, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. Just give it a go. So, sound good, mate?
Friends.
Thank you.